In a gripping tale of justice, two black teens, Darius and Malik Jackson, face humiliating discrimination at Apex Velocity Motors only to spark a revolution. Their father, tech billionaire Dr. Conrad Jackson, lands a helicopter at the dealership, buys it overnight, and dismantles its toxic culture. From firing bigots to uplifting the marginalized, the Jacksons transform pain into purpose, rebranding the dealership as Jackson Zenith Motors, a beacon of respect and inclusion. Tune in for a story of dignity, redemption, and the power to change an industry. A sharp bark cut through the chilled air of Apex Velocity Motors' showroom. "Summon security, these boys couldn't afford a single bolt on that bike," snickers echoed across the glossy marble floor, each one a jagged shard slicing into the spirits of Darius and Malik Jackson. The two black teens, 16 and 17, stood frozen, their expressions morphing from wonder to shock, then collapsing into a raw, burning shame that seared their cores. Escorted out under mocking stares, they couldn't fathom that within a mere day, this gleaming dealership would tremble, not from the growl of engines, but from a seismic reckoning beyond their wildest dreams. It unfolded on a sunlit Saturday in Crest Haven. The Jackson brothers, dressed in faded denim coats and worn-out sneakers, stepped into the city's premier motorcycle showroom. For months they'd pinched pennies from their after-school gigs. Darius sorting mail, Malik trimming suburban hedges, not to purchase but to steal a moment with their dream machines. "Think they'll let us try one out?" Malik murmured, his voice tinged with hope and nerves as they approached the glass facade of Apex Velocity Motors, eyes sparkling with expectation. "No harm in trying," Darius answered, exhaling to calm his jitters. "Like Dad always says, you miss every shot you don't take." Little did they know, past those shimmering doors, their value would be weighed not by their hearts, but by their clothes and complexion. Roland Harris, the head salesman, clocked them the instant they entered. His polished smile faded, replaced by a smirk as he whispered something to his colleague, Nina, who choked back a giggle at the reception desk. The brothers tread lightly among the polished motorcycles, their steps tentative, until they stopped before the showroom's crown jewel, a bespoke Zephyr X1, its crimson paint gleaming under spotlights, framed by sharp carbon fiber lines. Malik let out a soft breath. "Fastest bike on the planet," he whispered, gazing at it like a priceless sculpture. "Need help?" The voice was crisp, almost sterile. Roland strode up, his suit immaculate, his grin as empty as a cheap mask. "Just browsing," Darius said courteously. "This Zephyr's incredible. What's the price?" A heavy silence lingered. Roland's gaze scanned them head to toe, his lip curling. "This isn't a playground," he snapped, venom lacing his tone. "That bike's worth more than you'll see in a lifetime." The words hit like a sledgehammer, rooting the brothers in place. "We just wanted to ask," Malik started, but Roland barreled over him. "We don't have time for window shoppers who clearly can't buy. We're here for real customers." His voice rose, pulling eyes from staff and a few patrons. Then he crossed a line. "Get security. These kids couldn't afford a tire on that bike." A hulking guard lumbered forward as stifled laughter bounced through the show. Darius gripped his shaking brother's shoulder, his voice a murmur. "Come on, Malik. This isn't worth it." As they were herded out, one worker, Lila Wong, watched from the counter, her face etched with unease. Unlike her peers, she didn't join the mockery. She saw what others ignored, the sting of crushed pride, the fracture of aspirations, the silent wrong playing out before her. Outside, Malik slammed his palm against a streetlight, tears of rage pooling in his eyes. "They didn't even let us speak. They didn't care who we were." Darius stayed quiet, his silence weightier than any reply. The sun sank over Crest Haven, casting the sky in fiery orange and crimson, mirroring the Zephyr X1 that had fleetingly fueled their dreams. None at Apex Velocity Motors could have guessed the true identity of those broke teens. Far across town, in a sprawling estate atop Crest Haven's tallest ridge, Dr. Conrad Jackson, a titan of tech innovation and quiet philanthropist, waited to dine with his sons. Roland Harris had no clue what fire their tale would ignite when it reached their father. If this saga of retribution and redemption has hooked you, hit subscribe to catch the next chapter in this tale of honor and justice. As the brothers trudged home that night, heads low, a spark kindled within them. Their quiet wasn't surrender. It was a growing determination. On Darius's phone, an unread text from their father pulsed softly. "How'd the visit go? Ready for our new heli test tomorrow?" Roland Harris and Apex Velocity Motors were clueless, but they'd just made the worst mistake of their careers. A tempest was brewing, announced not by lightning, but by the hum of chopper blades. A dense quiet enveloped the dining hall of the Jackson estate, heavy as fog before a downpour. The faint shimmer of ornate chandeliers cast a warm glow across Dr. Conrad Jackson's impassive face, as his sons, Darius and Malik, relayed the ordeal at Apex Velocity Motors with careful composure. Polished silverware rested idle on delicate porcelain plates, the untouched dinner cooling in the gravity of the moment. "They mocked us, Dad," Malik concluded, his voice taut with barely restrained fury, "like we were less than nothing." Dr. Jackson didn't shout, didn't smash a goblet, didn't swear vengeance. Instead, he aligned his fork and knife with precision beside his plate, adjusted his silver-framed spectacles, and pinned his sons with a look that could carve through granite. "Did you break any rules?" His question was calm, almost meditative. "No, sir," Darius answered promptly. "We were respectful. We didn't lay a finger on anything without asking." "Then why did you walk out?" The words lingered, sharp as a guillotine's edge. The brothers exchanged a fleeting glance, uncertainty flickering between them. "We were ashamed," Darius confessed softly. Dr. Jackson stood, his towering, nearly 2-meter frame radiating quiet dominance. For 20 years, he'd forged a tech dynasty from scratch, navigating prejudice and closed doors at every step. Now, among the nation's rare black billionaires, he still endured doubtful glances in high society. "Tomorrow," he declared, his resonant voice carrying the weight of a solemn oath, "you'll see the line between fleeing and stepping back with intention." Upstairs, as Darius and Malik wrestled with their father's enigmatic promise, Dr. Jackson withdrew to his oak-paneled study, placing 3 calculated calls, one to his trusted aide, another to his private chopper pilot, and a third to a contact marked simply as real estate liaison. "I want every detail on Apex Velocity Motors by dawn," he directed his aide. "Ownership records, financials, market worth, leave nothing out." Meanwhile, at a bustling tavern nearby, Roland Harris basked in the glow of after-work drinks with his colleagues. On his 6th pint, he bellowed with laughter, retelling the day's events. "You should have seen their faces when I called the guard," he roared, sloshing beer onto the table. "As if those kids could ever buy a thing at Apex. They looked more like looters than clients." Across the room, Lila Wong sat in silence, her discomfort carved into her frown. Draining her glass, she snatched her bag and slipped away. In the dim parking lot, she started typing a resignation letter on her phone but stopped mid-sentence. There might be a wiser way to right this wrong. Come morning, the Jackson Estate's breakfast table was steeped in a tense hush. Darius and Malik watched their father, who scanned the morning paper with surgical focus, cutting his brioche with the precision of a sculptor. "Do we have to go to school today?" Malik asked, piercing the silence. "Always," Dr. Jackson replied, eyes still on the newsprint. "Learning is non-negotiable." He folded the paper with care, then locked gazes with them. "But you'll leave early. Meet me at the soccer field at 2 p.m. on the dot." "The soccer field for what?" Darius pressed. "It's the only spot at school big enough for a helicopter to land." The brothers traded stunned looks. The new Jackson Enterprises chopper, a custom Raven H7 sleek black with silver trim, had yet to be revealed to the world. All through their classes, the brothers' minds drifted, focus shattered. By 1:55 p.m., they stood on the school's soccer pitch, eyes scouring the cloudless sky. At precisely 2 p.m., the rhythmic pulse of rotor blades tore through the stillness. The Raven H7 crested the horizon like a shadowed raptor, unleashing pandemonium. Students and faculty pressed against windows as the chopper settled majestically in the field's center, stirring dust and drawing gasps of wonder. Dr. Jackson emerged, clad in a tailored Milanese suit, his sunglasses catching the afternoon light. With a slight tilt of his head, he beckoned his sons. Moments later, they were aloft, gliding over Cresthaven's skyline. "Yesterday, you faced a bitter reality," Dr. Jackson said through their headsets as they soared above the city's commercial sprawl. "You saw how the world sometimes sizes up young black men, how it damns us without a second thought." The chopper tilted gracefully, apex velocity motors coming into view below. "Today, you'll learn a new lesson," he went on as the pilot eased toward the dealership's vacant lot. "You'll learn about pride, about accountability, and about rising above while keeping your integrity intact." Inside Apex Velocity Motors, Roland Harris was deep in a sales pitch, gesturing grandly at a sleek motorcycle for a curious couple, when a bone-rattling roar obliterated his words. The thunderous pulse of a helicopter jolted the showroom, sending staff, customers, and the manager dashing to the windows, jaws dropping as a glossy Raven H7 settled boldly in the parking lot. "Who the hell's pulling this stunt?" barked the manager, storming toward the exit. "This is our property!" Roland trailed behind, annoyance radiating from him, until the chopper's doors swung open. His face drained of color as he spotted the two teens stepping out behind a towering, sharply dressed man. "No way," he whispered, recognizing Dr. Conrad Jackson from the glossy spreads of tech journals. Lila Wong, clocking in for her shift, lingered near Roland, a sly grin tugging at her lips. "Seems those kids you kicked out yesterday are back," she murmured, "and they brought their father." Roland's throat tightened, his frame stiff with panic, as the billionaire who commanded vast tech fortunes marched toward him with relentless intent, the same man whose sons he'd scorned and banished as nobodies. What Roland couldn't yet see was that Apex Velocity Motors was teetering on the edge of a massive upheaval, and Dr. Jackson's arrival was no mere flex of power, but the opening act of a complete reckoning, ignited by one razor-sharp question. "Do you know my sons? Because they sure know you." Time seemed to freeze in the dealership's lot. The chopper's blades slowed to a stop, but the silence that followed pressed down like a storm. Dr. Conrad Jackson advanced toward the showroom doors with steady, purposeful strides, Darius and Malik at his heels. His presence was electric, radiating a quiet authority that demanded focus without a raised voice. Roland stood rooted at the entrance, his face flickering between ashen fear and a flush of rising guilt. The manager, Victor Crane, hustled to intercept the intruder, his expression caught between irritation at the chaos and intrigue about the chopper's owner. "Sir, you can't land here. This is private land." His voice wavered as he clocked the face that had headlined Fortune just weeks prior. "Dr. Jackson, how can we help you?" Dr. Jackson didn't spare the manager a glance, his eyes drilling into Roland, who seemed to shrink under the scrutiny. Darius and Malik watched, their faces a mix of unease and subtle satisfaction. "You," Dr. Jackson said, jabbing a finger at Roland, his tone even yet sharp as a scalpel. "Do you remember my sons? They haven't forgotten you." The showroom went deathly quiet, every customer and worker glued to the drama. "Dr. Jackson," Roland faltered, grasping for composure, "it was a mix-up yesterday. I had no idea." Jackson sliced through his words with lethal precision. "No idea, yet you thought it fine to judge, humiliate, and throw out two young men based only on their looks and skin?" The dealership was gripped by a taut silence. Some employees traded anxious looks while Lila Wong watched intently, a flicker of relief softening her gaze. "Mr. Jackson," Crane jumped in, sweat beading on his brow, "I guarantee Apex Velocity Motors doesn't tolerate discrimination. If there's a problem, we can sort it out quietly in my office." Jackson pivoted to face him, his expression a mask of steel. "Quietly? Was it quiet when your team ridiculed my sons yesterday, when they were paraded out like thieves?" He swung his focus back to Roland. "My boys came here chasing a dream. They scraped together cash from their jobs, hoping one day to ride their own bikes. They didn't demand favors. They didn't drop my name. All they asked for was a sliver of decency." Roland opened his mouth to speak, but Jackson's raised hand stopped him cold. "You'll listen now. No interruptions," he ordered. "I've got a lesson you've obviously never learned." Dr. Jackson paced deliberately through the showroom, his hand grazing the leather of a polished Vantage bike. "A person's value isn't in their outfit or their skin tone. It's in their integrity." He stopped, locking eyes with Roland. "And yesterday you showed yours." Crane made a last-ditch effort to diffuse the tension. "Dr. Jackson, Roland's our best salesman. I'm sure this was just a one-time slip." At that moment, Lila Wong stepped forward, her voice trembling but firm. "It wasn't a one-time thing, Mr. Crane. He does this all the time. Young Black and Latino customers get treated worse here every week. A murmur of shock buzzed through the showroom as Victor Crane, the manager, shot a venomous glare at Lila Wong, who stood resolute. "You're out of a job," he snarled. "No, she's not." Dr. Conrad Jackson's voice slashed through the charged air like a whip. "In fact, no one here has the power to dismiss anyone at this moment." With a subtle flick of his wrist, he beckoned his aide, who had entered silently amid the clash, to step forward, gripping a sleek binder of papers. "As of last night," Jackson declared, "Jackson Enterprises holds the controlling stake in Apex Velocity Motors." A faint, razor-edged smile curved his lips. "In other words, I'm the one calling the shots now." The bombshell hit like a lightning strike. Crane stumbled backward, clutching a counter for support. "That's absurd," he muttered. "We're part of Zenith Global's franchise." Jackson gave a curt nod. "They needed capital. My team sealed a rapid win-win deal before dawn." Roland Harris's legs wobbled, the truth slamming into him like a runaway truck. Across the showroom, faces froze in disbelief, grappling with the revelation. Jackson turned to Roland. "You're done. Not just here, but at all 17 Apex dealerships across the country. I'm enforcing a zero-tolerance stance on discrimination, effective now." The ex-salesman's jaw dropped, words failing him. Crane made a final frantic plea. "Dr. Jackson, let's rethink this. We'll sort it out internally, I swear." Jackson shut him down without a pause. "You're out too. Rot starts at the top. If this happened on your watch, you're just as guilty." Then he faced Lila, who stood with a blend of reverence and astonishment. "Ms. Wong, correct? My sons mentioned you, how you showed them respect when no one else bothered." He offered his hand. "Would you take on the role of interim manager while we rebuild this team?" Lila's eyes widened in shock. She glanced at Darius and Malik, who flashed quiet smiles, then back at Jackson. "It'd be an honor, sir," she said, grasping his hand with conviction. Roland, finally finding his voice, lurched forward. "You can't pull this off. I'll take you to court." Jackson spun toward him, his stare now cold as steel. "Go for it. My lawyers would love to drag your actions into the open, with security tapes and witnesses to back it up." He gestured to his sons, who stepped closer. "My boys came here yesterday to see a Zephyr X1, he said, surveying the showroom. "Which one's your best?" What unfolded next left the room reeling. No one could have foreseen that two teens' simple visit would spark a total upheaval. As Roland and Crane packed their desks and slipped out the back, Darius and Malik roamed the showroom with a new ease, as if they owned the place, which, in a way, they now did. But Dr. Jackson wasn't done. His next move would redefine not just Apex Velocity Motors, but the entire luxury dealership scene in the region. And as Lila Wong began her first shift as manager, something even more staggering waited just beyond the horizon. By the next morning, Apex Velocity Motors had been reborn. A bold neon sign glowed above the entrance. Jackson Zenith Motors, respect leads the way. It wasn't merely a new name, it was a declaration. Lila arrived at dawn, her fingers trembling faintly as she turned the key in her new role as manager. Tucked in her satchel was the fresh code of conduct, drafted by Dr. Jackson that morning. Its opening line proclaimed, "Value people for their integrity, not their appearance." Outside, a throng was forming, drawn by a story that had spread like a brush fire. Tech Titan takes over dealership after son's discrimination ordeal. A news crew idled across the street, cameras poised. Darius and Malik rolled up in a battered pickup, still in the same denim jackets from their humiliating visit, but their gazes carried a new fire. Not of victory, but of purpose. At the doors, a nervous lineup of new hires gathered, 3 young black men, 2 Latinos, and a woman in a hijab, all skilled, all previously turned away by Roland or Crane. The hum of chopper blades announced Dr. Jackson's arrival, but as the Raven H7 touched down, a ripple of confusion swept the crowd. 2 figures emerged, not one. The second man's presence sent whispers through the onlookers, priming the stage for an unforeseen twist. "That's Roland Harris," a staffer whispered, nodding toward the former salesman walking solemnly beside Dr. Conrad Jackson, his once sharp suit traded for a simple polo and khakis. "Good morning, all," Dr. Jackson's voice rang out, resonating through the gleaming expanse of Jackson Zenith Motors. "Today isn't just the birth of a new dealership. It's the start of a new creed." The grand doors flew open, and a tide of onlookers surged inside, many capturing the moment on their smartphones. "Yesterday you saw what happens when you judge by appearances," Jackson continued, his tone steady yet commanding. "Today, you'll see something greater." Roland, the ex-salesman, stepped forward, his face shadowed with quiet remorse. "I made a terrible error," he said, his voice wavering. "I judged those young men by their clothes, their skin, and I shamed them in front of everyone." Dr. Jackson took the floor again. "Roland won't sell here anymore, but he'll take on a new role as Director of Equity and Inclusion at Jackson Enterprises, traveling to our firms to share the lesson he's learned." A collective gasp swept through the crowd, ripples of surprise spreading like wildfire. "True progress doesn't come from casting people out," Jackson said. "It comes from changing them. I don't want Roland to lose his way. I want him to reclaim his compassion." He drew a sealed envelope from his jacket. "I'm launching the Zenith Apprenticeship Initiative, offering full motorcycle technician training to 10 young people from overlooked communities. The first 2 will be chosen by my sons." Darius and Malik shared a knowing grin, already picturing 2 classmates, bike enthusiasts who could never afford trade school. "And this Zephyr X1?" Dr. Jackson said, placing his hand on the crimson motorcycle his sons had once admired, "will be auctioned, with every dollar going to scholarships for Black youth studying mechanical engineering. Real strength isn't in owning something costly, it's in uplifting lives." Outside, Victor Crane, the ousted manager, stood glowering, his face etched with resentment. Unlike Roland, he'd spurned Jackson's offer of a second chance. In his hands, he clutched a tattered folder of resumes he'd once discarded, talented applicants with unfamiliar names or faces that betrayed their heritage. His pride had robbed him of more than his title. It had stripped him of his dignity. By that afternoon, the saga of Jackson Zenith Motors had exploded across the nation, not for the chopper or the billionaire who'd seized a dealership, but for its piercing truth. A person's worth lies not in their attire or skin tone, but in the depth of their character. Lila Wong, now confidently rooted as manager, stood at the showroom's glass wall as the day drew to a close. The change was tangible, not just in the crisp new uniforms or policies, but in the warmth of the smiles, the openness in the faces, the electric vitality coursing through a space once cold and elitist, now radiant with inclusion. The saga of Darius, Malik, and Dr. Conrad Jackson unveils a profound lesson. True worth lies in character, not appearance, and confronting prejudice with courage can ignite transformative change. This story teaches us that bias, left unchallenged, poisons communities, but one resolute stand, like the Jacksons, can reshape systems. In our lives, this calls us to treat everyone with dignity, regardless of how they look, and to speak out against injustice in schools, workplaces, or neighborhoods. Small acts, like Lila Wong's empathy, prove every voice matters. By fostering inclusivity and holding ourselves accountable, we build a world where respect reigns. Apply this by listening to marginalized voices and challenging stereotypes daily. Thank you for joining this journey of justice. Please like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring tales. Drop a comment. How have you fought prejudice, and what lessons did it teach you? We'd love your stories.